Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. I feel like it's like a tennis match. I'll do what I can. Or I could just look at the camera and nobody can see me. Anyway, I am Rabbi Debbie Reichmann, as you just heard. This is my partner in crime and my dear colleague, Reverend Samantha Gonzalez-Block. And we are here from the Interfaith Families Project. What is the Interfaith Families Project? Now, I almost feel like, because we have some of our members here, to let them tell you, but you didn't sign up to talk, so. IFFP, the Interfaith Families Project, is a 30-year-old project, so we're not new. Everyone says, oh, is that new? No, not really. It's been around for a while. And it started in 1995 or 94. Actually, we don't know. We have both. It took a while. It's a project. 4 families of Christian and Jewish parents with children, and they wanted to find a place to have a religious home. They went to a church, and the church would be like, oh, yes, come on and come in. Confirmation's on Tuesday. They're like, whoa, breaks, please. They'd go to a synagogue. Oh, yes, of course, come join us. You are going to raise your children Jewish, right? No. We want to do both. You must be joking. No, they weren't joking. That is what they wanted to do, and that's what they have done. We are now a congregation of over 100 families, Jewish and Christian, with their children. We have a Sunday school that teaches both Judaism and Christianity. We gather on Sunday mornings for, we call it a gathering. It's our religious service. We'll do everything. We'll do the Jewish prayer, the Shema. We'll do the Lord's Prayer. We will read scripture and reflect on it, have songs, and then send the kids off to Sunday school. So that is IFFP. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. For me, it's literally, this is my dream job. You heard I went to law school, so I was a lawyer. I did that for 10 years. I really, really, really didn't like it. And I got very lucky. I ran into my college rabbi, who was the Jewish chaplain at Georgetown, at a wedding, and we had been very close when I was there as an undergrad. And he said, come talk to me. Okay, fine, I'll go talk to you. You know everybody, this is networking. I'm gonna get a new job. We talked for about 2 hours, and at the end of that conversation, he offered me a job in campus ministry, just out of the blue. And out of the blue, I took it, because I was really miserable as a lawyer. And it was perfect. I could not have been in a more perfect place in an interfaith campus ministry working with kids of all religions, and my colleagues were from all religions, and I took to it like a fish to water. But after a few years there, I went back to my rabbi friend and I said, I see something that I want to do. And he said, well, what is that? And I said, I see so many kids coming in through our doors saying, I'm part Jewish, half, quarter, I don't know, but I don't know anything about it because my mother, my father, my grandmother was shunned. The doors were shut in their face and I never learned a thing. And I said, this is wrong. This is not the way to be a good person. This is not what my religion teaches me. What if I became a rabbi and I said, yes, and no doors being shut, and just saying, where are you on your path? Where are you in your religion? How can I help you not have to give something up? How can I help you embrace? And so I became a rabbi specifically for interfaith families. And that's what brought me to IFFP and why I'm so happy. And I am going to say that, so that is great, and that's my history. I don't know if you all noticed, but this past week, couple weeks, interfaith relationships and families have been in the news. Anyone pick up on that? Or maybe not. Anyway, I think this talk right now is very apropos because this is something that is in the news right now and it's very much in people's minds. And I'll tell you the punchline. It works. It can be beautiful, and there's so much joy to be found in the interfaith world. All right, I'm done. Sam, your turn.
Thank you. What a great introduction. So again, my name is Reverend Samantha, and I have a question for you all. What if I said to you that every family is an interfaith family? What does that bring up for you? Or what do you think I mean when I say that? I believe that, 100%.
Every person's relationship with God is different.
Every person's...
We all believe slightly different theology and have different...
We all have different slightly different theology and different experiences. Yes, exactly. Other thoughts? Every family is an interfaith family. People are all different.
They respond differently to the same message.
They respond differently to the same message. Right. When your pastor preaches on Sunday, we agree, we heard exactly the same thing, right? You might say, I really love this part. That really spoke to me. Yes. Of course.
Of course. Because he's right there. We have to see.
Of course. Right? But they'll say, I really heard this. I really heard this, right? Anything else? Every family is an interfaith family. Well, it's true. Every family is an interfaith family for all the reasons that you expressed, right? We come at our traditions differently, even when it's the same denomination, right? Even when it's the same church family, right? We're all coming in with different approaches. We have different parents, right, who taught us different things to lift up. What did our home look like? What kind of practices did we do at home? Did we pray at the dinner table? Did we pray before bed? Do we not pray at all, right? Those are all things that speak to you and that really affect the way that you see your faith or you see your tradition. So, and just to kind of broad strokes, interfaith families in the more traditional sense we'll often hear people say like, well, how does this work? Or this is so not mainstream. But actually, statistics say that nearly half of families now are interfaith families in this country, meaning that and interfaith is described as also intrafaith. So they might describe that not just Christian and Jewish or Muslim and Hindu, but even within the denominations, right? Sometimes there's some distinct differences. But nearly half, right? That's a big number, right? And so oftentimes people will reach out to us to do interfaith weddings, and that's very common. That's happening more and more and more. Not only that, we're also a globalized world. We're entering into spaces that maybe we didn't enter in before. We're visiting countries. We're visiting neighbors who go to synagogue, who go to mosque. And we're having people invite us into those spaces. We're having interfaith relatives and extended family, and we're celebrating holidays with them and with neighbors. So none of us live in silos. We don't live in boxes. We are constantly in relationship with other people, and that affects our understanding of our own tradition. So I grew up in an interfaith family. My father is Jewish. My mother is Presbyterian, Christian, also with some Catholic ancestry too, so I have a lot of Catholic relatives as well. And my family, when they got married, people gave them about a year. They said, you probably are not this is too different. My mother's also Puerto Rican, so we had an intercultural family. My parents have been married now for over 40 years. They're very happy. All is well. But when
Puerto Rican Presbyterian?
Puerto Rican Presbyterian, Jewish. We call ourselves Jew-Ricans. Yes. We're a small but mighty tribe. But when they got married, they realized, when my older brother was born, they realized they hadn't really negotiated what they were going to do with the kids, right? And so my father said, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, you know what? It's the same God. Why don't you raise them Jewish? My dad wasn't really going to synagogue at the time. And so they said, well, he said, I don't really go. And she says, well, I want to go to church. Well, I'm going to bring them to church. So we started going to church with my mother. And then as we got a little older, my father, really inspired by my mother's faith, wanted to dive more deeply into his. And so he started to go to synagogue more. So suddenly we were going to church and we were going to synagogue. And we were doing kind of Friday and Sunday. But what was happening was, because we were going to church school, the synagogue didn't permit us to go to Hebrew school because we were a family that was doing both. And you might think, oh, that was such a terrible experience. But really, it's not uncommon for interfaith families to reach some point where there is this sort of wall that's put up, this kind of protective, wall where you say, oh, something's different about us. Why? And so that was sort of my first introduction to feeling rejected or feeling like something wrong with me. And that wasn't the only thing I heard. I heard relatives who I love dearly say things to me like, you know, your father's never going to go to heaven because he's not Christian. And telling someone who's 7 or 8 that is really scary, right? Or telling me, you know what, you're only half Christian because your mom is Christian and your dad isn't, right? And feeling told that I was half of something, I wasn't fully included. So I had a lot of questions and a lot of fears and a lot of pain. And at the same time, I was so curious about these traditions that my parents told me were mine to claim. So I'd often ask my parents a lot of questions, and my father would say, that's so good, asking questions is what being Jewish is all about. And my mother would say, great questions, pray to God to give you the answer to those questions. So I really got this influence of 2 parents that were really trying to teach us and engage us in all of who we are. And I remember when I reached 13 and I was getting ready for my confirmation, I was really scared because I didn't want my confirmation to be a rejection of my Judaism. I wanted it to be a celebration of this piece of who I was. And so I remember saying to my father, I'm not going to that confirmation unless you're going to be there. And he said, I'll be there. And so I was confirmed in the church at 13, and I continued to be so curious about religion that I ended up majoring in religion in college and focusing on Judaism. And when I was 23, 10 years later, I had a bat mitzvah. The end. No, I had a bat mitzvah.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. But for me, having that bat mitzvah, it was something I did for me. I did it at Monday night. I remember I went to this place downtown in New York City, and we were all 20-somethings. We were all doing our bat mitzvah together. I realized a lot of us were interfaith kids who had been curious about exploring that. And I felt a little bit like Yentl, if you remember that movie with Barbara Streisand. I was kind of doing it for me. Nobody knew I was practicing until 2 weeks before. I said, I'm having a bat mitzvah, parents. You should come. You know, they're, what are you talking about? Great, you know. So, but it was through that bat mitzvah experience, actually, that I felt my call to ministry. That I realized out of all the work that I was doing that you were sharing with me back, I was seeing my life flash before my eyes. I realized everything that I was doing, I wanted to do it through this lens of faith and through this lens of not just traditional faith, but a faith that could be open and accepting and welcoming. And when I got to seminary, I realized there weren't a lot of people talking about interfaith kids. There wasn't a lot of theology for us to grab hold of. And so I ended up focusing my studies on how clergy can support interfaith families. And lo and behold, in that process, I learned about IFFP. And I couldn't believe that this place existed. And when I went to see it, it was like the end of a movie. It was like, oh, my relatives are here. You know, I couldn't believe that I was in a room filled with other families because my parents had never had another family to really navigate that with. So it was really, truly a blessing. And so when I meet people, and we meet every day in our work, we encounter couples that come to us distressed, sweating. What's going to happen to our kids? Will they be confused? Are they going to have nothing? And I always say I never would have become a minister had I not grown up in an interfaith family, and I had not gotten the opportunity to ask the questions that I got to ask. And so I always say, I'm not confused. I don't think it's a big challenge. I thought it was the greatest blessing of my life. And I wish that we could talk more about those blessings and those joys of interfaith marriage and interfaith families, as opposed to talking about this fear and this challenge, but really what are the opportunities and the possibilities, especially when we think about this world that's so divided, that can't talk across the table from each other. What does it mean to have families that are bilingual, that are trilingual, that can speak across culture, that can speak across language and tradition, and speak it with curiosity and with respect? And so that, I hope from our talk today, as we continue on, that's what you hear, that there's blessing and there's opportunity when it comes to interfaith families.
Exactly. But, okay, you're probably wondering, how does it work? Like, what are the gears? What are the parts to this? And has anyone ever taken apart a watch, like the old analog kind? I mean, I'm sure this is just as difficult. Like, I did it once, I got in big trouble because it pops out and there's all these gears and pieces and it looks like, how does that tell time? But it does. This is kind of like that, only you can build 14,000 different watches, but there's a lot of moving pieces. And it's first of all, if we talk about the relationships. Okay, let's talk about the central relationship in a family, the marriage. A marriage is not, and this is regardless of what faith you are, it's not a one-for-one exchange. If you're in that kind of marriage where like, well, if I do the dishes today and you do the sheets tomorrow, no, I mean, it might be that way, but it's a shared life. You work on it. It's a compromise. And you somehow say, okay, well, these are my priorities. These are my priorities. How are we going to get them to come together? It's the same. And, Sam was just saying, we are all in interfaith relationships, and you probably were like, no, I'm not. Yeah, you are. And I'm going to tell you and how I know this. I am Jewish. I am married to a Jewish man. We grew up very differently Jewish. And when we met, like, our parents were so happy. Oh, you met a Jewish person. And we're like, oh, yes. And then, then the rubber meets the road, and I said to him, he was coming to my house for Passover, and I said, oh, do you have a kippah? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, the thing you put on your head, the yarmulke. He's like, yeah, I know what that is, but what was the word you said? And I said, well, I used the Hebrew word and used the Yiddish word. He's like, I never heard that in my life. I was like, didn't you have a bar mitzvah? Yeah. I was like, what did everyone have on their heads? Yarmulkes. Okay, whatever, very different. And then eventually, we had kids, and I was like, I went to Jewish day school. And he's like, I think that's terrible. And I said, excuse me? He's like, no, I don't want my kids growing up religious. I'm like, I'm not terribly religious. This was before I was a rabbi. And honestly, and he was like, yeah, but no, I'm not comfortable with that. And I said, well, I really, really am. We had to negotiate it. We had to figure out how that worked. Yes, they did go to Jewish day school, because once I pointed out how much he didn't like Hebrew school, I mean, Sunday school is an issue for, I think, everybody. Like, a kid's like, seriously, isn't Monday through Friday at school enough? So I was like, do you want your kids to play soccer or go to Hebrew school? Which is not fair, because you really can do both, but anyway. They went to Jewish day school. They are their own people. They're doing great. They both played soccer for a little bit, like what I call the amoeba soccer stage, when they're just all these 6-year-olds moving in one big blob. Didn't really get past that. They have other hobbies, as do I. So it's not, so an interfaith relationship is the same. You are setting out and talking to one another. This is what's important to me. And when I say it's not a one-for-one, it doesn't mean, what Sam was saying, her mother went to church all the time. That was normal. And her father didn't. And that was normal. But they were both very spiritual, religious people, just differently. So when Sam's father said, no, you take them to church. I'm not going to synagogue right now. It wasn't giving up. It was, there's going to be something else in the house, maybe Passover or Hanukkah. There was other ways. So it's not a give and take in that respect. It's really what's my priority? What matters to me about my religion? And how can I share that? How can I give that as an opportunity to the other person? And that's really what it is. It's about giving everybody else a chance to learn, to grow, to embrace something that's not theirs. So that's kind of how it works. It's still very esoteric, because I cannot tell you, it's not a recipe. In the first thing in the morning, you do this and that and the other. No, you have to figure it out. Each family has to figure out how it works. But one thing I do want to absolutely emphasize is that you don't go into this wanting your partner to change. That's not going to work. And that's not going to work in a marriage. We've heard it a million times. Oh, they'll stop burping after, I hate that habit, but it'll stop. It'll stop. No, let me tell you, it will not stop. It just won't. But that's exactly like that. It's not a separate part of a relationship. It's all included. So you don't go in there saying, I'm going to change my partner, because if that's how you're going into it, you're going to have a lot of problems, not just in religion. So that is how you do it. But Sam, sometimes there's problems, right?
Sometimes there is problems, Rabbi Debbie. So I wanted to share a little bit about kind of what happens when the rubber meets the road, right? We meet a lot of couples. We do a lot of weddings and life cycle events, baby namings, baptisms, funerals, right? Where people are navigating all of the family dynamics, right? So we might have a couple that they're not that religious, but their parents are, or we might have someone that's passed away and they were Christian, but their partner who's been left behind now is Jewish, right? And how do you do a funeral that honors the person that's passed, but also supports the family that's left, right? We have families that say, okay, we're going to do a baptism and a baby naming, but how do we feel about baptism? How do I feel about baptism? How do you feel about it, right? And so there's a lot of different kind of pieces that go to this, right? And so oftentimes when we meet couples along their way, they have some kind of pain or trauma. Like I expressed the pain that I felt as a kid of that rejection, but they're usually dealing with something like, mom is not happy and we don't know what to do about it. Or we've gone to 3 rabbis and they won't marry us. We've gone to a pastor, she won't baptize my baby because my baby is interfaith. Those are painful places to begin. And when I think about that as a pastor, I think about kind of Jesus welcoming the outcast, right? And welcoming somebody that feels like there's no room for them in the inn, when really there should be a space of welcome. There should be doors open, right? And so we also try to help our couples know how to navigate that, because oftentimes they might feel that rejection from somebody that they love and somebody that they want to continue relationship with. And so we talk a little bit about, if you want to even just do this for yourself, like we have them hold hands oftentimes, but kind of just building a little circle around each other. And we call this their sacred circle. And we say to them, what's so important for you is at the end of the day, you can hear all the noise, you can hear all of the opinions, but at the end of the day, what you two decide together is what goes. And so really empowering couples to really follow their heart, follow their faith, follow what they really believe, and take in that noise, but also know when it doesn't need to be responded to. And when they're on the same page, often that can be the strongest, right? When they say, I know you want Billy to have a bar mitzvah, but we've decided that's not really what Billy wants to do right now. Maybe when he's 23. So I think that's a really important piece. We also talk a lot with our couples around communication and curious questions, something that we all could use in all of our relationships, right? Instead of saying, I don't know, I don't want my kid to be baptized because you know what that means? It means that now he's a Christian. Well, what does that mean to your partner? Maybe for your partner, maybe that means being welcomed into this part of who they are, but not rejecting the other pieces of who they are. Maybe that's a welcome into family. Maybe that's a welcome into God's love, right? And so oftentimes we approach our partners or even our friendships, right? I'm saying partnerships, but we know that all of these are relationships. We could have a neighbor, right, where we assume, oh, you're Muslim or you're Hindu or you're Buddhist, you must believe this, right? And when we sit down and break bread together, I know this group likes to break bread. If you break bread together and you learn, oh, I didn't know that you thought that way. I think that way about things. Or that's very similar to something that I've learned in my tradition, right? And so it really is so beautiful what unfolds sometimes in these conversations. And we do this Interfaith Couples Workshop every winter in January. And all are welcome. But we really kind of work with our couples around how do you really have these curious questions. And one of our congregants, Susan Katz-Miller, wrote this beautiful book called the Interfaith Family Journal, and I highly recommend it to anyone. We have a member of our staff who's atheist, and she and her husband did this journal, and thought it was so helpful. But it gives you kind of a chance to ask questions to each other that you would never ask, deeper questions about what are the traditions that matter to you, and how do you want to build your home together? And so I think so often we come at each other assuming things because of our culture, or because of our tradition or our background, but really we don't take the time to go a little bit deeper. And so we really try to emphasize that as well. I think those are all the things that I wanted to share. Yeah.
Actually, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So, It's not so much a question, but let's share this story.
Sure.
And it starts like a joke, kind of like being here, only it was a rabbi, a priest, and a minister all got together for a baby naming baptism
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. And yet we did that. And so when it comes to life cycle events, yes. I mean, the answer is yes, you can do that. And there's not one way of doing that. I have had the good fortune over these many years. I was telling someone I get to perform over about 25 weddings a year, plus bar mitzvahs and baby namings and funerals, these life cycle events, and they are by far, I mean, I love what I do with IFFP, but these, sort of single shot joyous times are really special as well. And they're all different, and they're all the same. And we manage to do it, and I do this, sometimes I co-officiate with priests and imams and Hindu priests as well, and I'll do it myself, or sometimes I'm just there to say one prayer. It doesn't matter. These people are expressing their love and sharing that unity and love with everyone else, and it's a welcome, it's an opportunity. That's why I tell everyone, it's an opportunity to learn, to grow, to know something today that you didn't know yesterday. And the thing that you just learned today, you're going to share with someone tomorrow. This is how it works. It grows and it builds. This is what IFFP has been doing for 30 years. And if, a total plug here, but you have, there's information all around. This weekend is our open house. So come and see, just hang out. Of course, you'll probably be in church, so never mind. We film it, it'll be online.
Share with your friends.
Yeah, so, but share with friends who may not be going to church, but come join us and see, what does IFFP do for a service? We have Jewish prayers, we have Christian prayers. We don't mix them. That's not what we're about. We are two separate religions that have full respect and love for one another. We've said love, I think, 1,000 times. I think we said joy 1,000 times. And these are the two most major parts of being an IFFP, of being in an interfaith world, is how much you can get from it that is life-giving and life-affirming. Is that about everything I was supposed to say? Oh, one last thing. Goodness gracious. Children, right? What's gonna, that was the big question in the room. How do kids do this? How are they gonna, not get confused? Well, Reverend Sam didn't get confused. So right there, you don't get confused. But this is one of my favorite stories. When I visited IFFP years before I actually started working there, the adults have this continuing education time when the kids are in Sunday school. That was ending, the Sunday school let out. This little girl, maybe 5 years old, I guess, comes running up to her dad, who I was talking to, saying, "Daddy, Daddy, 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 look, 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 look." And she's like, "Here's my Easter cross and my Shema." And I was like, wow. But you know what excited me? This kid was having fun at Sunday school. She wanted to be there. That was cool. They can do this. We can do this. We are capable of so much more than we think, and our children can really hold multitudes in their minds and not be confused. They are so much better at it than people think they are.